I had this moment yesterday that I can't shake. I'm sitting at this coffee shop, you know, the one on the corner with the wobbly patio chairs,
Oh, yeah, I know the one.
and I'm just trying to have like 10 minutes of peace with an espresso. And all of a sudden, the entire sidewalk starts to vibrate.
Uh-oh.
And there's this ungodly mechanical scream and this bright red blur. I think it was Ferrari, maybe. I'm not a car guy. It just tears past me.
Going way, way too fast for that street, I'm guessing.
Oh, easily. Double the limit, probably more.
Yeah.
And the noise was just, it was designed to be obnoxious.
Yeah.
You know? But here's the thing. I watched the car disappear, and then I looked around,
Mm-hmm.
and every single person on that sidewalk did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It was like synchronized swimming.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, and I mean everyone, just rolled their eyes, looked at each other with this little smirk, and I swear every single person was thinking the exact same thought.
Let me guess. I wonder what he's compensating for.
Precisely.
Mm.
Word for word.
Yeah.
Small man, big engine. The whole cliche. It was automatic. And I caught myself doing it too. But then I sat there thinking, that's weird, isn't it?
How so?
I don't know that guy. For all I know, he's a Formula One driver testing something out. Or maybe he just really, really appreciates Italian engineering. But my brain immediately jumped to a diagnosis. It decided that loud car is a symptom of some deep psychological deficit.
Well, it's the universal default, isn't it? But there's a reason for that. It's not just because we're all, a bit judgmental.
Which we are.
Which we absolutely are. But it's because deep down, even if we've never touched a psychology book, we understand a fundamental premise of human behavior.
But that it's not random.
It's not random. There's always a driver.
And you don't mean the guy in the leather seat.
No, I mean the internal driver. We just instinctively know that unless someone is having a complete break with reality, people don't do things for no reason. There's always a why.
And that why is usually not the thing you see on the surface.
Exactly. That's the part that gets so interesting.
Right, because if you pulled that guy over and asked him, "Sir, why are you driving like a maniac in a car that costs more than my entire apartment building?" He's not going to say.
What?
He's not going to say, "Well, officer, I have a deep-seated fear of mediocrity and I'm terrified of my own mortality."
No, he's going to say, "I love the speed," or "I worked hard for this thing," or maybe just, "It's a beautiful day for a drive."
And he's not lying. Not consciously, anyway.
He isn't. He believes his own reason, and that's the key. Those are the conscious motivators. That's the tip of the iceberg.
The part we can all see.
Right. It's visible. It makes logical sense. But the massive, enormous chunk of ice under the waterline, that's where the real action is.
That's the engine room.
That's where the biological drives, the social programming, and all the old psychological wounds are living. And that, I think, is really what we're trying to get at. We're looking at the hidden drivers.
The forces that make us do things that, when you write them down on paper, make absolutely no sense at all.
Or things that make a little too much sense, but we'd rather die than admit to them. It's about, sure, predicting or influencing behavior, but I think it's mostly about just understanding.
Yeah.
Because once you can start to see the hidden driver, the world stops looking like the series of random, chaotic events.
And it starts to look like a machine.
Yeah.
Very complex, but ultimately predictable machine.
Exactly.
So if we're going to pop the hood on that machine, I guess we have to start with the concept that seems to govern all the darkest, dustiest parts of it. We have to talk about the shadow.
The same as shadow. Carl Jung's big idea.
Okay, can we clear something up right away?
Okay.
Because whenever I hear the term the shadow, my mind immediately goes to, like, a cartoon villain.
Sure.
Or, I don't know, a brooding goth kid writing bad poetry. It just sounds so mystical and spooky.
It does have a certain dramatic flair, doesn't it? Jung was, if nothing else, a great brander. But functionally, it's not mystical at all. It's just mechanics. Think of your psyche, your whole mind as a house. When you're born, you're a baby, you live in all the rooms, you're loud, you're messy, you're angry, you're joyful, you're selfish, you're generous, you're everything.
You're a toddler, you are pure, unfiltered impulse.
Pure id, right. But then, your parents, your teachers, your culture, they start walking you through the house and they start pointing at doors. They say, "We don't do anger in this family. Lock that room."
Okay.
Or, "Don't be so boastful. That's arrogant. Lock the vanity room." Or even something seemingly innocent like, "Stop singing so loud. You're being annoying."
So you lock the creativity room, or at least the loud, spontaneous creativity room.
You do. And this is a really key point. The shadow isn't just evil things. It's not just, the secret desire to murder your neighbor or steal from your job.
Right.
It is simply the unaccepted stuff. It's the big psychic trash can for everything we've disowned about ourselves because we were taught or we learned that it might cost us love or safety.
So it's a trash can for parts of me. Okay, but trash implies it's garbage. What if I locked away my ability to be assertive because my parents just wanted a nice, quiet kid? That assertiveness, which is a good thing, is now in the trash can.
It is, and that's a tragedy, right? Because assertiveness is an incredibly useful tool. But in the filing system of your mind, it's been tagged with a big red sticker that says, dangerous, do not touch.
So where does it go? Does it just sit there? Does it evaporate?
Well, basic physics tells us energy doesn't just evaporate, it changes form. And this leads to my absolute favorite metaphor for how the shadow works, because it so perfectly explains the sheer energy cost of being a good person.
Okay,
It's the beach ball.
the beach ball. Lay it on me.
Okay, imagine you're standing in a swimming pool, waist deep in water, and you're holding a giant inflatable beach ball. That ball represents your shadow. All the parts of you that you've decided are unacceptable.
So my anchor, my greed, my laziness.
But maybe also your ambition, if you were told not to be a show-off. Or your wildness, if you were told to be proper. All of it. Now, your job, your entire life strategy, is to hide that ball from everyone.
So I have to hold it underwater.
You have to shove it down. Now, have you ever actually tried to hold a big inflatable ball underwater?
It's basically impossible. It fights you the whole time. It wants to shoot up to the surface.
And it takes constant active pressure to keep it down, doesn't it? It's exhausting.
Yeah.
That is what we are doing psychologically every single day. We are expending a massive amount of mental energy just suppressing our shadow. And as long as you're focused, as long as you're vigilant, you can kind of keep it submerged. You can present the smooth, placid surface to the world. See, no beach ball here.
But nobody can stay focused forever. We get tired, we get stressed, we have a couple of drinks.
And what happens when your grip slips, even for a second?
The ball doesn't just gently float to the surface.
No, it rockets out of the water. It explodes into the air, sometimes smacking you right in the face.
And that's what we call acting out.
That's the explosion. This explains so many things, but especially that strict student phenomenon. I think we all knew a version of this kid in college.
Oh, absolutely. The textbook case.
Picture this kid, raised in a hyper-rigid, super strict household. Academic excellence is the only god they worship. No time for play, no making messes, no defiance of any kind is ever tolerated. The parents are controllers.
So the kid learns the rules. Chaos is bad. Fun is a distraction. I must be a perfect, orderly machine.
Right. So his conscious personality, the tip of his iceberg, is the perfect student. He's disciplined, he's polite, he's ruthlessly organized.
But he's a human being. He's got to have impulses for wildness, for rebellion, for just making a mess.
Of course he does. But since he can't express them, where do they go?
Into the beach ball.
They get shoved deep, deep underwater. And for years, the pressure just builds and builds and builds.
And then he gets to university. The parents are hundreds of miles away. The grip on the ball finally slips.
And the explosion is spectacular. It's never just that he goes to one party, it's that he goes completely off the rails.
Binge drinking, failing all his classes, maybe getting into legal trouble, the whole 9 yards. The pendulum just swings from one extreme of order to the absolute other extreme of chaos.
And everyone from his hometown is completely shocked. They all say, but he was such a good kid. I can't believe it. What happened to him? He's throwing his whole life away.
But if you understand the shadow, it's not a mystery at all. It makes perfect sense. He's not really throwing his life away. He's violently trying to reclaim the parts of himself that he is forced to repress.
The beach ball just finally hit him in the face.
It's like the psyche itself demands balance. If you push too far into the light or the good, the dark, or the chaotic, it just builds up this incredible potential energy until it shorts out the whole system.
Jung absolutely believed the psyche is a self-regulating system, just like the body. You know, if your body gets too hot, you sweat to cool down. If your psyche gets too one-sided and rigid, it will eventually seek chaos to find equilibrium.
But the beach ball doesn't always explode like that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more subtle. It sort of sneaks out. And this is the part that I think is going to make a lot of people, including me, really uncomfortable.
You're talking about projection.
Yeah. Because holding that ball down is just so exhausting. It's painful to have to look inside yourself and admit, I am a petty person, or I am a weak person, or I am a greedy person. So the brain, it pulls this incredible magic trick.
It says, it's not me.
Right. It says, I'm not petty, but look at him. He's incredibly petty.
Exactly. We take the quality we despise most in ourselves and we project it onto a screen. And that screen is usually another person. It's the psyche's way of relieving the pressure without having to own the trait.
Let's use the boastful intellectual example.
Yeah.
I have such a visceral, almost allergic reaction to this archetype. You know the guy.
Oh, we all know the guy.
He's at a dinner party, and he's just holding court. He's dominating the whole conversation, using these huge, unnecessary words, constantly correcting people's grammar or what they said.
He's rolling his eyes if someone hasn't read the same obscure article that he just finished.
Yes. The whole performance is designed to signal one thing. I am the smartest person in this room, and the rest of you are basically talking monkeys.
And how does that make you feel?
I hate him instantly. I want to argue with him. I want to prove him wrong. I want to see him publicly fail. It's a really strong reaction.
Okay, so let's analyze him first, from a distance. Why is he doing that? What's his hidden driver?
My gut reaction is just, he's arrogant. He genuinely thinks he's better than everyone else.
That's the surface behavior. That's the mask. But let's look at his shadow. Why would someone be so pathologically obsessed with proving their intelligence over and over again? A person who is genuinely, quietly secure in their own intelligence. They don't need to bludgeon other people with it.
Oh, he's compensating. It's
Yep.
a sports car thing all over again.
It's the exact same dynamic. He is terrified of being stupid. Deep down in his shadow is a trembling, insecure little part of him that's convinced he's actually a fraud, that he's inadequate, that he's not smart enough. He built this entire fortress of intellectual superiority to hide that fear from himself. So when he calls someone else stupid, he's really just screaming at his own beach ball.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
That almost makes him a bit tragic. But here's the part that's hard. Why does he trigger me so much? The outline talks about this mirror effect, and I have a feeling I'm not going to like the answer.
Well, this is the part of the work that requires, brutal self-honesty. So if you look at that guy and you just think to yourself, wow, he's being rude, and then you move on with your night, that's fine. That's a healthy observation.
But that's not what happens.
No. If you get hooked, if you feel that hot flash of anger in your chest, if you find yourself obsessing over him later, if you feel a compulsive need to take him down peg, that's a signal.
The signal of what?
It's a signal that his shadow has just found and high-fived your shadow. You're having a strong reaction to him because he is embodying a part of you that you have repressed and disowned.
Wait. So you're saying I hate him because deep down I'm worried I'm stupid?
Uh-huh.
Or because I secretly want to be the arrogant one who's the center of attention?
It could be either one or both.
Huh.
Maybe you have a repressed desire to be the center of attention, to show off how smart you are, but you were taught your whole life that it's rude to show off. So when you see him doing it freely, your shadow just screams, hey, we're not allowed to do that. Why does he get a free pass?
Wow.
In a way, you're jealous of his freedom to be a jerk.
That is a profoundly annoying thing to have to admit to myself.
Or it could be the other thing. It could be that his act touches on your own deep insecurity about your own intelligence. If you were 100% completely secure in how smart you are, his insults and his posturing, they wouldn't land. They'd just sound like noise, like a car alarm going off down the street.
But the fact that it sticks.
The fact that it sticks means there's Velcro on your side.
Velcro on your side? That's a really good image. So basically, anything that really truly drives me crazy in other people it's probably an invitation to look in the mirror.
Almost always. The people who trigger us the most are our greatest teachers. They are showing us our own shadow.
So, on a practical level, how am I supposed to deal with this guy at the dinner party? Because my instinct, my gut reaction, is to debate him, to prove I'm smarter than he is.
Which is the trap. That is exactly what his ego wants. If you fight him on his terms, you are validating his entire game. You are confirming that intellectual combat is the correct way to interact. You are just reinforcing his defense mechanism.
So I have to do the opposite of what my instincts are screaming at me to do.
If you actually want to disarm him, yes, you have to learn to speak to the shadow, not to the mask. You validate the insecurity underneath the arrogance. You don't say, you're wrong about that, philosopher. You say something like, wow, that's a really interesting point. I can tell you've thought a lot about this.
Ugh, that feels like surrender. It feels like I'm letting him win.
It feels that way to your ego. But what you're actually doing is signaling to his terrified inner self, I accept you. You don't have to fight for your worth in this room. It often completely deflates the balloon. He suddenly relaxes because the perceived threat is gone. You've skillfully moved from a position of judgment to one of curiosity.
It's like psychological judo. You're using his own forward momentum to neutralize the threat.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
All right, speaking of things that are difficult and uncomfortable to deal with, let's shift gears a little. There's another voice in our heads that seems to cause a lot of trouble. We've talked about the shadow, but we also have to talk about the inner child. And I have to be honest with you, I hate that term.
You and about half the population, I think.
It just sounds so, I don't know, so soft. It conjures up images of a bad therapy session where someone's telling me to hug a teddy bear and cry about my lost innocence. It feels very new agey and woo-woo.
I completely get that. It has a terrible PR problem, so let's just strip all the woo-woo away from it. Let's not talk about teddy bears. Let's talk about neuroscience.
Okay, now you're speaking my language.
Your brain is a piece of hardware, and it's running various kinds of software. You wrote a lot of your core operating code, the foundational stuff, when you were between the ages of, say, 2 and 7. That's when you learned the absolute basics. How to handle conflict, how to get attention, how to deal with disappointment, how to feel safe.
Okay, makes sense.
Now, fast forward 30 years. You're in a boardroom meeting, you're wearing a suit, you're an adult. But something happens. Your boss criticizes your work in front of everyone. You feel threatened, you feel humiliated, you feel ignored. And in that moment of high stress, your brain doesn't run the shiny adult 2026 software.
It doesn't.
No, it defaults to the oldest, most robust, most battle-tested code it has. It reboots into Windows 95.
So the inner child is really just legacy software, a bunch of old neural pathways.
It's a neural pathway that was burned in deep when you were very small and very vulnerable. And the rule is, when we're under stress, we regress. We call this phenomenon the adult tantrum.
Oh, I see this at work constantly. It is actually shocking how often a professional, high-stakes environment can devolve into a preschool playground.
Give me an example. Who's the child in your office?
Okay, let's call him Steve. We all work with a Steve. Steve is a project manager, but Steve is also, well, he's a flake. He misses deadlines. He forgets to reply to important emails.
Yeah.
And when you confront him about it, when you calmly say, Steve, where is the report that was due yesterday? He doesn't respond like a professional.
What does he do?
He pouts. I'm not exaggerating. He literally pouts. Or he gets incredibly defensive. You guys are always picking on me. It's not fair. The software crashed again. It's this whole poor me victim routine.
Okay, so State has just booted up the helpless child software package. He learned, somewhere deep in his past, that if he acts helpless and persecuted, someone else will step in and he gets off the hook. But here's the really dangerous part of that dynamic. When someone acts like a child, what role do they automatically force you into?
The parent.
Exactly. It is an almost irresistible magnetic pull. If he acts like a naughty, helpless kid, your instinct is to become the scolding parent. You want to lecture him. Steve, this is completely unacceptable. You need to grow up and take responsibility.
Or the rescuing parent. Oof. Fine. Just move over, Steve. I'll do it myself because it's easier than dealing with you.
And boom, the trap snaps shut. In either scenario, he wins. If you scold him, he gets to feel like the martyr and the victim, which is what he wants. If you rescue him, he gets to avoid doing the work, which is also what he wants. You have just reinforced his behavior. You rewarded his inner child.
So I'm actually enabling him by trying to fix the problem. I'm part of the problem.
100%. You are completing the circuit. You are co-creating that dysfunctional dynamic with him.
So how? How do you break that loop? If I can't scold him and I can't rescue him, what am I supposed to do? Just let the project fail.
You have to refuse the invitation to the drama. You have to stubbornly, resolutely stay in your adult self.
That sounds incredibly hard. What does that actually sound like in a conversation?
It sounds boring. It sounds like objective facts. Steve, the report wasn't submitted. As a result, we have now missed the client deadline. What is your plan to fix this by 5 p.m. today?
And when he starts with the whining, but it wasn't my fault. The server was slow.
You ignore the emotional bait. You don't react to the whining. You just repeat the facts like a broken record. I understand you feel it wasn't your fault, but the report is still missing. The deadline has passed. What is the plan? You are creating a relational vacuum. You're refusing to step in and play the parent role. You are forcing him to step up into his own adult self to bridge that gap.
That feels incredibly uncomfortable. My whole body wants to just fix it.
It is excruciatingly uncomfortable at first, but it is the only way to help him update his software. He has to learn, through repeated experience, that the helpless child routine no longer yields the results he wants.
Wow. We are really just walking collections of old habits and programming, aren't we?
Old habits, old programming, and ancient biology. Which brings us down to the basement of the house. We've been in the psychological rooms with the shadow and the child. Now we need to go down and talk to the lizard.
The reptile brain.
The pleasure principle. This goes all the way back to Freud, but it's also just basic evolutionary biology. At our absolute core, the oldest part of our brain, the operating system, is a simple binary.
Seek pleasure, avoid pain.
That's it. That's the whole game.
It just sounds too simple. I mean, we love to think of ourselves as these complex, rational creatures, Homo economicus, who make logical decisions based on spreadsheets and data.
We absolutely love to think that. It's a very flattering fairy tale we tell ourselves. But the hard reality is that the brain is, in many ways, a drug addict. It is constantly scanning the environment for the next hit of dopamine, which is pleasure, and doing everything it possibly can to avoid the stress hormone cortisol, which is pain. And there are specific rules to this game that explain why we make some truly idiotic decisions.
Okay, let's break down these rules, because I feel like this is going to explain why I find myself doom scrolling on my phone at 2 in the morning when I know I have an important meeting at 8 a.m.
That is a perfect example of rule number 1. Time distortion. The brain is absolutely terrible at conceptualizing the future. To the reptile brain, the future is a vague, abstract idea. It might not even happen. A saber-toothed tiger might get us before tomorrow morning.
So now is the only thing that's real.
Now is real. Later is fiction. So in your doom scrolling scenario, the pleasure of that funny cat video is right now. It is an immediate, guaranteed hit of dopamine. The pain of being exhausted for your meeting is tomorrow.
It feels like it's a million miles away.
It's an eternity away. So the brain does the math. Certain immediate pleasure now versus hypothetical distant pain later. The now wins almost every single time. This is the fundamental reason why diets fail, why people don't save for retirement, why we procrastinate. The pleasure of the pizza is here. The pain of heart disease 20 years from now, no contest.
It's basically a design flaw in our wiring for the modern world.
It was a survival feature that became a bug. We are wired for a world where resources were scarce and life was brutally short. We are not wired for 401ks and long-term strategic planning.
Okay, so that's time distortion. What about rule number 2? Pain is stronger than pleasure.
This is the principle of loss aversion. Evolutionarily speaking, missing out on a tasty berry is bad, but being eaten by a predator is fatal. So the entire system is rigged to prioritize safety over gain. Avoiding a loss is a much more powerful motivator than achieving an equivalent gain.
The outline uses this treasure versus truck scenario, which I think illustrates it perfectly.
Right. So visualize this. You are standing on the side of a long, straight highway in the middle of the desert. In the middle of the road, there's an open chest. It is overflowing with gold bars, diamonds, the deed to a private island, everything you've ever wanted in your life.
Okay, I'm visualizing. I am very interested in this chest.
But 100 yards down the road and coming at you at 90 miles per hour is a massive semi-truck, and you can see that the driver is asleep at the wheel. No brakes.
Yeah, my interest in the chest is suddenly gone.
Do you run out into the road to grab a handful of gold?
Of course not. I jump back. I get as far away from the road as possible.
Exactly. The fear of the pain, which is certain death, completely and totally overrides the desire for the pleasure, which is immense wealth. Survival always wins. And this explains why so many people stay in miserable jobs or unhappy relationships for decades.
How does it connect? Is the job the truck?
No, the change is the truck. The uncertainty, the what if I can't find another job? What if I fail? What if I end up broken alone? The misery of the current job is a known quantity. It's a pain, but it's a familiar pain. But the risk of stepping out into a new path triggers that primal pain avoidance system. So we stay on the side of the road just staring at the treasure chest, too afraid to make a move.
That is profoundly depressing.
It's profoundly human.
Okay, what about the next rule? When our brain just lies to us about what is actually painful. The jalapeno chapulines example.
Ah, yes, the chili lime grasshoppers. Have you ever actually tried them?
I have not. I have a very strict no visible legs on my food policy.
And see, that is the rule in action right there. Rule number 3, perception is reality. Objectively, chapulines are salty, they're crunchy, they're a little spicy. If I blindfolded you and you ate one, you would probably think it was some kind of a weird potato chip. You would experience pleasure.
But if I see the little eyes and the antenna,
your brain screams, bug, contaminant, poison, disgust.
It predicts pain. And that prediction is so powerful that it physically stops you from taking the action. We don't react to reality, we react to our mental model of reality. If you perceive asking your boss for a raise as painful, awkward conflict, you will not do it, even if the objective reality might be more money and respect. Your perception creates your world.
So we're essentially trapped by our own predictions about what's going to hurt.
We are, until we find the courage to actually test those predictions. Now, there's one last rule here that I think I relate to on a deeply spiritual level. It's the survival override, the nachos incident.
We have all been there. You're at a restaurant with friends, you've already eaten dinner, you are full. You have made a solemn promise to yourself that you are going to be healthy this week.
And then someone orders the fully loaded nacho platter for the table, and they put it right in front of you.
The smell of the melted cheese hits you, the fat, the salt, the carbs.
And I basically black out. My hand has a chip in it before my brain even registers a conscious thought.
That's because your frontal cortex, the logical, rational part of your brain, literally goes offline. The ancient reptile brain sees high calorie density. In the evolutionary environment, finding a sudden, unexpected source of fat and salt was like winning the lottery. It meant you would survive the winter.
So my brain thinks a famine is coming. We must stockpile these calories immediately.
It triggers a survival override switch. It bypasses your willpower completely. You find your hand reaching for that chip before you've even decided to eat it.
So it's true. I didn't choose the nachos. The nachos chose me.
In a very real neurological way, yes, but we have to be careful here. Because if we stop the analysis at this point, we just sound like biological robots with no free will. Oh, sorry, I cheated on my taxes, officer. My reptile brain wanted the extra resources. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Right. We aren't just lizards. The outline brings up the Holocaust example, which is a very heavy pivot, but it's a necessary one.
It's the ultimate counterargument to pure biological determinism. You read accounts from people like Viktor Frankl, prisoners in concentration camps, people who are at the absolute bottom level of survival, starving, freezing, facing imminent death every single hour, would still sometimes share their tiny ration of bread with someone who is even weaker.
That violates every single rule we just talked about. That is actively choosing pain, which is hunger, over pleasure, which is eating, for no biological benefit to yourself.
It proves that while the pleasure principle is an incredibly powerful default setting, it isn't absolute. Humans have a unique capacity for meaning, for morality, for love, for connection that can, in certain moments, override the most basic biological wiring. We can choose to face the truck for a reason that's important to us.
Which is actually pretty hopeful. We can upgrade the software if we try hard enough.
We can, but it takes immense effort. It takes consciousness.
So we've explored the basement with the lizard. Now let's go back upstairs and look at the architecture of the whole building. We have to talk about the pyramid. We have to talk about Maslow.
The hierarchy of needs, a classic.
Now, I have a bit of a bone to pick with Maslow, or at least with the way it's usually presented. I've always felt like this pyramid is a bit too rigid, a bit too clean. Like it's a video game where you absolutely have to clear level 1 to unlock level 2 and so on.
That is the most common critique. People always bring up the starving artist argument, right? The guy who has no food and no safety, living in a freezing attic, but he's painting these incredible masterpieces. He's skipping all the levels and going straight to self-actualization.
Exactly. Doesn't that just break the entire model?
It complicates it for sure, but I don't think it breaks it. Maslow himself didn't mean that you have to have one level 100% satisfied before you can even think about the next. He talked about prepotency, which is just a fancy word for dominance.
Okay.
All he's saying is that if you are literally drowning, you are not thinking about your poetry, you are thinking about air. The lower, more fundamental needs have the power of a veto over the higher ones.
Okay, that makes more sense. It's the tiger in the room scenario.
Yeah.
If a tiger walks into your art studio, the painting stops.
Immediately, physiological safety overrides absolutely everything else. But the real day-to-day value of the pyramid isn't for analyzing famous artists. It's for understanding where ordinary people are coming from right now.
The shelter counselor case study from the outline captures this really, really well.
I think it's the best practical application of the theory I've ever seen. So imagine you're a counselor working at a women's shelter. You have 3 different women who come to you for help on the same day.
Okay, so woman A has just arrived. She literally just escaped a violent situation. She's terrified, she's shaking, she doesn't know where she is.
Where is she on the pyramid?
Rock bottom, the first 2 levels, physiological and safety needs.
Right. She needs a door with a lock. She needs a warm bed. She needs a hot meal. If you sit her down in that moment and start saying, let's talk about your self-esteem and your long-term life goals, you are completely failing her.
She can't even hear you. Her brain is just a siren going off, screaming, danger, danger.
She doesn't have the psychological bandwidth for growth. She is 100% in safety mode.
Okay, so then Woman B comes in. She's been living at the shelter for 6 months now. She's safe. She has a part-time job.
So the panic has subsided, the bottom levels are stable. Now a new kind of ache starts to surface. Loneliness. Where is she now?
She's moved up to level 3, love and belonging.
Exactly. She needs community. She needs friendship. She needs to know that she's not alone in the world. So now the counselor's strategy has to shift completely. It's no longer just about locks on doors. It's about organizing coffee mornings, group therapy sessions, community events.
And then there's woman C. And this is the really tricky one. She comes in, she has visible bruises, she's clearly in trouble, but she denies everything. She says, "Oh, I'm just clumsy, I fell down the stairs." She refuses any help.
Now, this woman isn't just dealing with a threat to her safety. She's dealing with a profound threat to her ego. To admit that she is a victim of abuse might be so painful, so shattering to her identity, her sense of self, that she can't face it.
And this leads us to the final and maybe the most powerful piece of the puzzle, the invisible force field that protects us from a reality we can't handle.
Yeah.
The ego defense mechanisms.
The ego gets a really bad rap in popular culture. We think of it as arrogance. He has a big ego. But in this psychological context, the ego is simply your idea of who you are. It's your self-concept. And that self-concept is incredibly fragile.
The source material calls it a giant armored porcupine.
I love that image because when the ego feels threatened, when it's confronted with shame or failure or the terrifying realization that I am not who I thought I was, it doesn't shrink. It puffs up. It shoots out its quills to defend itself.
And it lies.
It lies pathologically. We call it intellectual dishonesty. And the key is we lie to ourselves not primarily to deceive other people, but to keep our own self-concept from shattering into a million pieces.
We absolutely have to talk about Fred.
Poor Fred.
Fred is the ultimate cautionary tale. So Fred is a super fan of a famous pop star. His entire identity is wrapped up in this fandom. He runs the online fan club. His walls are covered in posters. He dresses like the guy. His whole sense of self is, I am the world's biggest fan of this amazing artist. And then the pop star gets arrested for terrible, horrible crimes. And the evidence is overwhelming and undeniable.
Now, a rational outside observer looks at the evidence and says, wow, that guy I liked is actually a criminal. But not Fred. What does Fred say?
Fred says it's a conspiracy. The media is out to get him. The police planted the evidence. The victims are all lying gold diggers.
Now, is Fred just stupid? Is he incapable of reading the court documents and seeing the facts? Fred isn't stupid. Fred is terrified. Think about the psychological stakes for him. If the pop star is a monster, then Fred has devoted his entire life to worshiping a monster. That would mean Fred's judgment is terrible. It would mean Fred's identity is built on a complete and total lie. The ego cannot survive that level of catastrophic shame. So to save Fred from that psychic death, the ego simply deletes reality. It creates a denial bubble around him.
And denial is the first and most basic defense mechanism, right?
It's the blunt instrument. It didn't happen. It's not true. You see this all the time with people who are terrible drivers. They get into 5 accidents in a year, and every single time it's someone else's fault. He came out of nowhere. The road was wet. The sun was in my eyes. They cannot integrate the identity of, I am a bad driver, so they have to rewrite the laws of physics for every accident.
Okay, what about rationalization? This is the one I feel like I use the most. The sour grapes defense.
Aesop's fable, the fox and the grapes. The fox tries and tries to reach the grapes on the vine, but he can't jump high enough. So to protect his ego from the feeling of failure, he walks away saying, they were probably sour anyway.
I did this last year. I applied for this big speaking gig. I wanted it so badly. I spent weeks on the application, and I didn't get it. And immediately, within 5 minutes of getting the rejection email, I was telling my wife, you know what, honestly, it's for the best. The travel schedule would have been a nightmare, and the audience wasn't really my core demographic anyway.
Do you see how fast that happened? That was your ego rushing in with a tube of psychological polysporin to put on the wound of rejection. You instantly reframed, I failed, into I wisely avoided a bad situation. It makes you feel better in the moment, but it also completely prevents you from asking the important question.
Which is, why didn't I get it? Was my application not good enough? What could I do better next time?
Exactly. It stops all growth. Defense mechanisms always choose short-term comfort over long-term truth.
Displacement is another really nasty one. This is the classic kick the dog syndrome.
This is just basic physics again. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred. So you have a terrible day at work, your boss humiliates you in a meeting, you are filled with rage, but you can't scream at your boss because if you do, you lose your safety net, your paycheck. So you have to swallow the rage. You get in your car, you drive home stewing, you walk in the door, and your kid has left a toy in the middle of the hallway.
And you just explode. Why is this house always a complete disaster? Can't I have 1 second of peace?
You are dumping all of the boss rage onto the kid. The kid is a safe target, the boss is not. It's profoundly unfair, it's destructive to your relationships, but in that moment, it protects you from the scary, high-stakes conflict at work.
Let's talk about reaction formation.
Yeah.
This one is fascinating because it's so counterintuitive. It's not just hiding a feeling, it's acting in the extreme opposite way.
The most famous example, of course, is the violently homophobic politician or preacher who is later discovered to be secretly gay. But a much more common everyday example is the toxic positivity friend.
Oh my God, yes, the good vibes only person.
Why is that person so pathologically obsessed with happiness and positive thinking? Very often, it's because they are terrified of their own sadness or anger. They have a deep fear that if they allow themselves to feel 1 ounce of grief, they will fall into a black pit and never be able to climb out. So they construct this aggressive, performative happiness to keep their own darkness at bay. They are literally shouting down their own shadow.
That makes so much sense why those people are so exhausting to be around. You can feel the effort. You can feel the tension under the surface.
You can feel the inauthenticity. It's a mask, and it takes a lot of energy to keep it on.
So is there any good way to handle all this negative psychic energy?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we all just doomed to be these neurotic, defensive porcupines for the rest of our lives?
There is one that's considered the healthy or mature defense, and that's sublimation.
Sublimation, like in chemistry.
Kind of. It's taking that raw, dark energy, the rage, the fear, the grief, the sexual frustration, and channeling it, transforming it into something socially acceptable or even productive.
So like the person who's furious about something, and instead of yelling at someone, they go to the gym and lift incredibly heavy weights.
That's a perfect example. Or the artist who goes through a devastating heartbreak and channels all that pain into writing a platinum album. Or the person who feels profoundly lonely and decides to volunteer at an animal shelter. You are not denying the feeling. You're not projecting it onto someone else. You are using it. You're turning the psychological lead into gold.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
We've got the shadow and its beach ball, the inner child running on legacy software, the lizard brain playing by its simple rules, Maslow's pyramid, and the ego's porcupine defenses. It is a very, very crowded house in there.
We are wonderfully complicated machines.
So what's the takeaway? What do we do with all this information? Because on one hand, it all points towards compassion, towards understanding, towards seeing people as whole. But on the other hand, it's kind of terrifying. Because if I truly accept all this, if I accept that the guy in the red Ferrari isn't just a simple jerk, but is maybe compensating for some deep, unspoken pain.
Then you lose the simple, satisfying pleasure of judging him.
Exactly. I lose my moral high ground. And even more importantly, I then have to turn around and ask myself what my judgment, my eye rolling was compensating for. What was I protecting in myself?
And that is the real work. That is why most people, most of the time, don't do it. It is so much easier and more comfortable to live in a simple black and white world of good smart me versus bad dumb them. But if you actually want to understand the world, and more importantly, understand yourself, you have to be willing to drop the gavel.
You have to move from judgment to curiosity.
I wonder what hidden driver is running that behavior. I wonder what beach ball just popped up for that person.
And the hardest question, I wonder why I am so bothered and triggered by it.
That's the most important question of all. The shadow isn't a problem to be solved and eliminated. It's a part of you to be understood and integrated. If you can stop projecting all your disowned stuff onto everyone else, you might find that you have a lot more energy and a lot more peace. You might find you're finally the one who's actually driving the car.
Which is a very sobering thought to end on. Next time a Ferrari zooms by.
Check your own speedometer.
Thanks for diving in.
My pleasure. See you next time.